We start with the capture by Syrian Kurdish fighters of two British militants who fought for so-called Islamic State in Syria. The two men, Alexander Kuti and El Shafi El Sheikh, were known for their role in the torture and execution of Western hostages. They were part of a group of four British fighters who became known as the Beatles by virtue of their British accents. Well, joining us now is Nicholas Glavin, an independent terrorism and insurgency analyst who used to work at the US Naval War College's Center on Irregular Warfare and Armed Groups. Greetings to you, Nicholas. Can you tell us about the sequence of events? Because I understand these men haven't just been picked up. It was back in January.
So the Kurdish fighters from the Syrian Democratic Forces, the multi-ethnic force the U.S.-led coalition is partnering with in Syria, captured these two individuals, and they were subsequently turned over to U.S. Special Operations Forces. Now, biometric scans confirms the identities of both these two individuals.
These two individuals, as you say, part of a wider group who came to be known as the Beatles, because, you know, they were known by mainly their hostages dubbed them that because of their British accents. The one that we know most of, that the people recognise, would be Jihadi John. But these two individuals, did they also play a prominent role in the kind of allegations that have been meted against them?
Right. So as you said, arguably the most notorious of the four, Mohammed Emwazi Jihadi John, was killed by a U.S. drone strike in Syria in 2015. The other two were ISIS guard in these jails for the Westerners, these Western hostages. And the other individual, Anya Davis, is currently serving a prison sentence in Turkey after having been smuggled there and trying to plot an attack in Turkey. So the four of these played an instrumental role in the detaining and the propaganda materials that they would push out towards Western audiences.
This is a big coup for not just for the US military, but for all the anti-terror forces, and in particular for the Syrian Kurdish fighters who caught them. Tell us why it's such a big deal.
Absolutely. Capturing these individuals alive is a remarkable opportunity for the U.S.-led coalition and the partners that found them. Now, these last two individuals and that Beatles cell more generally directed the propaganda videos at the heads of state of Western governments, struck fear in the minds of their citizens, and all the while spoke with an English accent directly to vulnerable Westerners to recruit them as ISIS fighters. So them having been underground for this long, despite the years-long manhunt by the coalition, shows how embedded they were into that ISIS core leadership. And those devices that they carried and what they can disclose under interrogation, that'll be instrumental in exploiting for intelligence.
According to some reports, they've already been disclosing certain things.
Well, that's correct. They've given some idea of what the ISIS current leadership and that structure looks like, even as the coalition starts to remove the last remaining ISIS leaders from the battlefield and dismantle their network. But moreover, I think they'll be able to give more information on those other hostages held by ISIS, such as John Cantil, that British photojournalist who's become quite a frequent figure in Western targeted propaganda.
Is it known at all whether they're likely to end up like Anya Davis, whether they'll be held in Turkey or what will happen to them, Guantanamo Bay or where, do you think?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Despite them being from West London, it isn't necessarily clear that they'll face justice back home. The UK rescinded their citizenship and about 140, 150 dual citizen foreign fighters last year in a preventative measure as that physical caliphate started to collapse. It is possible they will be prosecuted through the government of Iraq, as were other captured foreign fighters, but it's more likely they'll go through the process under the U.S. federal courts. These are specially designated global terrorists under the U.S. Department of State, and the American legal system is well tested at prosecuting these sorts of terrorism cases. On that topic of Guantanamo Bay, this could be quite the challenge for detention. It'll spark a debate over whether there's a legal justification to hold them being ISIS members as opposed to Al-Qaeda members. And once a case is contested at Guantanamo, it's very difficult to get the sort of justice that we want to see out of these.
Nicholas, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Nicholas Glavin, who's an independent terrorism and insurgency analyst.